Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I have Mike and Jay with me from the middle finger of Vecna,
Hello.
which
Hello.
I'm already seeing some love for the name for those that may not be familiar. And guys, as always, all you have to do is go down to the description on YouTube and Facebook. You can find tons of social links, website links, store links to check these guys out and follow along and get access to a bunch of great content. So, how are you gentlemen doing this morning?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. It's early over here on the West Coast.
Are you,
I'm early for my day off, at least.
Now, are both of you guys on the West Coast?
No, I'm out here in California, up near San Jose. Mike, you guys are Central Time, Middle Time. Yeah, you're San Luis.
So, how did you guys all connect up and come up with the name, the middle finger of Vecna?
The pun is all mine, unfortunately. I started this blog with a buddy of mine who lives near here, and we started churning out a whole bunch of content. But we had hung out in the Giant in the Playground forums for a really long time, or at least I had. And I had seen Jay's stuff all over the place, and eventually I kind of asked him to come on as a contributor. So I guess we started the blog in May 2015. And we had Jay on as a regular contributor
A couple months later, about November,
2015.
And Mike and I for like about a year prior to that, we had worked with a couple of the people on that blog to put up a big comprehensive remake of the old 3.5 edition binder, which got a fair bit of traction on the forum. And through that whole thing, Mike we had talked about getting together and doing more stuff for the blog, and so I joined on as a proper contributor around then, and just kind of been going ever since.
Prior being an improper contributor.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Because he had contacted me on the forum and had said, hey, I like your stuff. Is there any stuff you want to do? I do PDFs of this stuff. Do you just want to get something that looks a little bit nicer? Because that's kind of one of our biggest hooks for our stuff is that Mike is an incredible design artist with regards to trying to get stuff that looks like it should be proper, Wizards content, basically, or proper D&D content. So he's like, hey, you want me to do some stuff of your work? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I had this one Warlock patron that was a vampire that that I put out, and he really liked that one. And so I said, yeah, I would love to do that, but I also like your other stuff. I would love to actually just be a regular contributor with you guys. And so, made myself a dumb hand, pseudonym, because that's what everybody.
Okay, yeah. So little tiny bits of overview. Every bit of content we release, and we release stuff Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. At least 2 of those 3 posts have PDFs attached, which kind of gives you an easy way to slot it into a game, so you have something a little more concrete you can hold on to. And all of the writers have dumb. So we're the middle finger of Vecna. We have Jay's the palm of Vecna. We have someone else who's the knuckle, and someone else who is
the thumb.
Dumb. It's all dumb hand puns because that's what we are. Dumb puns.
Dumb hand puns. It's all right, man. It works. It starts with the puns and then it ends in dad jokes at some point. What are you gonna do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have Ted for that in our group. So you guys are also creating content over on YouTube as well. You've got a decent amount of subs over there. You got a decent channel.
I don't know how that happened. It is a mystery to me how we got so many views on YouTube. Me, same buddy again that started the blog originally. He has a nice camera and a whole bunch of sound equipment, and he went, hey, let's do a YouTube thing. So we did a YouTube thing, and it's a completely kind of separate animal. We do a lot of D&D cocktails over there, D&D themed cocktails, which is just great because he's a mixologist and I like drinking them. And we do a lot of just kind of like we're trying to get into more more like meaty D&D content where we can talk about it. We have a good kind of call and response where we respond to a whole bunch of comments in the video, which I think a lot of people like. And some we just kind of like randomly jumped up to something like 12K subscribers recently. It's the channel is Rocks Fall, Everyone Dies. So you can see more of me over there.
Yeah, and it's also linked in the description, guys, as always. And so, why did you guys switch from the middle finger of Vecna? Did YouTube give you a hard time about that name?
Oh no, that was mostly because I wanted the YouTube channel to have kind of its distinct name, and we've been in certain places we want to migrate away from Middle Finger of Vecna, so all of our books that we publish on our Patreon are actually under the name Mage Hand Press, because I don't want to have to fight wizards over the name Vecna. As much as we kind of love that identity, yeah, we're Mage Hand Press over there. So we decided on YouTube, yeah, let's just try to like give it a good show name and then see where it goes. It's a shame that we're not a little more condensed in terms of like who we are, but we have the same logo everywhere, so that's nice.
Yeah, this fancy shirt I got on right there.
The way it was bunched up, it looked like the Rolling Stones.
No, that's our it's the only piece of merch I think that we've ever produced, and unfortunately we only made like 5 of them because making merch for a store is a lot more expensive than I think a lot of people ever think.
Go to like Redbubble or a Spreadshirt. We use Spreadshirt. You know, you just have to upload the stuff, and then the great part is we never touch anything, and just like money comes eventually. It's a little more expensive because it's print on demand, but it kind of fills the need that we don't have to have boxes of shirts all over the place and try and figure out what we need.
That's a thing definitely to think about because
and it gives the fans the chance to buy the stuff they want to buy. So
yeah,
it's a win-win.
They keep asking us, "Are you guys gonna put out shirts?" I was like, "Well, we don't have any. So I only have like a room in a house. I don't really have a lot of stuff."
Spreadshirt, my man, and they have better quality than some of the other ones that are out there. So that's where I would go to take a look. Truebait wants to know: is the position of Pinky of Vecna still open?
Yeah.
I think that had been. So when you started the blog,
yeah, I tried to. That was a temporary position for somebody who wanted to get on and then didn't end up digging it so much. But yeah, so it's open again.
When we start looking for more people to.
Yeah, we're gonna run out of like flattering hand stuff. So this is probably next.
The 5 of us together are already kind of like Mike is kind of like our official cat herder most of the time, but. Like,
yeah, that's my job. As editor, cat herding.
You think with only 5 people it'd be a lot easier to deal with stuff, but it's still 5 individual people, and we're all terribly passionate about D&D. So like,
you're gonna eventually end up with the cuticle of Vecna.
I believe we had the cuticle of Vecna at some point or other. Like it's just like so there were like I think there were two other people who were kind of writing with Mike at the.
I brought one person on as a proofreader for a little bit. And we gave him a name like that. I think there's basically 2 other spots open. And I mean, and eventually, we'll probably move away. We're running out of nouns. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, I find sometimes like with bringing on help, the thing that's difficult is like they always see like the fun stuff that you do, but they don't get in there and do the stuff is really sloggy and tedious and monotonous, and that's like the real stuff that makes a business work.
Yeah, so I've been doing all the sloggy, monotonous stuff, and I've been letting them write, and then I just shoot down their ideas.
Terrible! This is garbage!
Oh, everybody always like, I think we have so many people who are like, oh, we want to watch it, we want to like see what you do live stream, like, oh, maybe you guys can like help build something on YouTube, and we can go start from scratch. And like, I just want to say right here, you guys don't understand how bad of an idea that would be, because it's just going to devolve. It would be like, hey, let's have this idea, and then it would be me and Mike shouting at each other for a good probably 4 hours.
Like so much in a given week.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. We're still. That's the thing. Like, we're still friends. Like we did. Like I said, we were just chatting last night for an extended period of time, just because we like talking about D&D. But at the same time, since we both are very passionate about our ideas, I'll bring something up and I think, oh yeah, no, this is perfect. This is exactly the way it should go. And then Mike's like, that's stupid and that's a bad idea. or it doesn't work because of this and this balance reasons, and you didn't understand that, and I'm like, yeah, you suck, Mike, and I hate you, and blah blah blah, and then we cut off for like an hour, and then we come back. It was like, okay, well maybe you're right.
This has been at a fever pitch more recently because we're working on kind of expanding our kind of biggest campaign setting, Dark Matter. The physical kind of printout of the 125-page version we put out a few months back. And it is a full sci-fi conversion to 5th edition that doesn't alter any of like the core rules. So it's just you plug it in, and the whole edition now works in this very like you can have a fighter or a mage or a gadgeteer or a gunslinger all running around in a sci-fi setting, all kind of equally coexisting. Very strong opinions about how that should be built. And boy, is it coming out so well.
That's funny. First of all, I got to thank Fantasy Grounds for the super chat, and they have a question: left or right-handed? And at some point, they're probably going to ask you about running games over on Fantasy Grounds because they always do. But there's a ton of sci-fi stuff coming out, and everyone always asks us how to play different sci-fi games with 5e, and we're like, why would you? Just go play, like, when you want to play Star Wars, just go play that game. That's a terrible idea. And a lot of folks are doing it really well, yeah. I want to say, though.
So one of the things that we did, because, just a little history with that. So in the very early stages of that particular thing, Dark Matter was like my home setting. It's to be fair, like we've changed it. It's been changed so much that it is no longer what I originally set up because I was just throwing regular D&D stuff. Like pretty much all the stuff that I used was Wizards IP that we can't use. So but I was running because my favorite old edition setting is Spelljammer. Right, I love Spelljammer, and so there's the idea of getting in a pirate ship and flying off into space and going to fight giant monsters and stuff is just like my thing. When we started 5e, and I told Mike this yesterday, my 5e, my very first character I created in 5e because I love non-standard stuff was a warlock who was a great old one patron, but he was a hermit who had like the discovery background, whatever it is, and the thing he found that taught him how to be a warlock was a Sith holocron, and he had a laser pistol that was his Eldritch Blast because I like those kind of dumb sci-fi crossover things, and so we started looking at this. I'm like, I really kind of want to run something where it's very out there, very kind of crazy. And I also want to run something where you can bring in literally any sort of setting or character or, background or build, and it works. It fits with the setting, which you can do in space because you can just say, all right, every world, every planet exists in our little galaxy. Forgotten Realms is over there. Dark Sun's over there. Eberron might be over there. Or our home worlds might be over there, and blah, blah, blah. And you can find those. And then, the only thing that really kind of gets tricky and where you have to really make your own rules is talking about space combat and ship-to-ship combat and stuff like that. But for everything else, you look at trying to emulate something like Star Wars. I mean, you have, a guy who has a lightsaber and magic force powers. Well, it's basically a blade warlock or, a paladin or something like that. You have, rogues and scoundrels who have blasters and everything. That's we just need to kind of make a special.
Our biggest innovations in Dark Matter have been like really nailing blaster rules and really nailing ship combat and kind of just making that setting feel really lived in and making it very accessible to like any kind of interpretation of science fiction you want to bring into it, and having just amazing art all the way through.
Our artist Kirby is is probably part of the reason why we've gotten so good, because his art is just phenomenal. It is ridiculous. We got so lucky with that guy.
The Mighty Hob wants to know, is it related to the Dark Matter TV show?
It is not. It is not, in fact, related to Dark Matter, to the TV show. I made that thing way before I even knew there was a Dark Matter TV show, and then I found out, and I'm like, okay, no, this is nothing. No, this is not anything like that.
Well, maybe you we got a we early on we got a cease and desist from Fox.
For
we did a Son of Nerdarchy shirt design, and kind of mimicked it, but like all they're really doing is using a motorcycle rocker anyway, that they all use.
Oh, okay, I get you're getting it.
Yeah, but ours was the Grim Reaper, but it was two goblins standing on each other's shoulders, so it's like, come on, right? You're breaking my balls. But I think it was Teespring that we ran that through, and they're like, no, we were shutting it down.
We aspire to getting cease and desist orders from big companies. That's where we want to get to.
Because that means at some point or another, people are actually paying attention to us.
Yeah, apparently we did it wrong. Like, you're supposed to like social media that stuff and everything, and we failed. We should have sent the email to everybody, out on all of our social media. But what are you gonna do? No, and a lot of times we will like D&Dize different characters and do things similar to that. We played a modern game, and what we found out was the spellcasters, they just ended up using AK-47s and throwing grenades instead of casting spells.
You have to be so careful with firearm rules. We had I have done such insane math to get the blasters and dark matter to check out on a level where they are reasonable to stand up against, like cantrips and sword and board. Because otherwise, if you take the core rules from the DMG, it runs away so fast, and it's like, why would you ever use a sword? Like, a pistol does so much more damage, which, fine, is realistic, but that's not really the power fantasy you want to be playing all the time. It's your wizard just stops using spells for bullets. So, yeah, it's a challenge getting those things right, and to make that game kind of, like, live correctly once you have the rules set down.
I think it's great that when I like building a character in D&D Beyond, the antimatter rifle is there in the equipment section, just because it's like everything that's in all the core material is there. And I was just like, I was building pre-gens for a convention, and I was like, antimatter rifle, maybe.
I think I'll use this for my barbarian. That seems about right.
Seems about right. Yeah, there's nothing like a raging barbarian with an antimatter rifle. So one of our regulars, Arif, has a question. I'll throw it to you guys, see what you guys think. What do you do as a player when a large party group is split playing two different style games and the DM does nothing? I'll throw it to you, and then I'm probably going to give the answer that I give to most of these style questions.
Wait, so is he asking playing in two, like they've broken apart, they've split the party, or that they're trying to play two different styles?
It sounds like they're trying to play, like the players are trying to play two different styles, and the DM's like, whatever.
I tend to come across with having kind of a strong personality with regards to people I play with. I always am that. I'm that guy at the table who will very much so enjoy taking the kind of leader role. Which is why I always end up trying to play party faces, and I like warlocks so much. So it's more of a thing of like, well, if two people want to be murder hobos and two other people want to actually talk to everybody in town, I really try to kind of rein in other people and be like, hey guys, maybe don't kill all the town guards. I have a pile of gold here that we can use to pay for stuff. Please don't. I want to keep playing.
My solution to that is my solution to a lot of problems in DMing is themed episodes. Everything I know about DMing I learned from TV, so I like doing very, very like focused episodes where it's like, this is the musical episode, or this is the heist episode, or this is the flashback episode, and you focus it in like an old kind of campy TV show, and then I think the kind of goals and objectives align a little more if people are kind of familiar with their tropes. People still have the ability to kind of take it in different ways, but you can kind of focus in kind of a given session on one idea or one like way of presenting it, and I think that tends to wrap up my players, even if they're kind of like running in different directions, into a pretty cohesive like goal when they're playing.
So anytime I see these kind of questions, I'm like, well, this is like I feel like people always want in-game solutions to out-of-game problems, and like you generally can't solve things. Like step one is just to like ask the GM like what his thinking is. Maybe he just doesn't know what to do. He's like, I don't know. These guys are playing this way. These guys are playing that way. I don't know what to do. And you know, if someone is non-confrontational as well, they're not going to, you know, they're probably not going to speak up. But the only thing you can ever really do is just talk to people. You know, first I would sit down with the GM privately and be like, hey, you know, this is what I'm seeing. What are your thoughts on this? And
it's a psychology thing. I mean, like, you know, you're dealing with, because that's one of the great parts about D&D is that it's not a board game. I mean, it is in a sense, and you know, 5th edition less so than 4th edition. But you know, part of the great thing about D&D is that it's a chance to interact with personalities. It's a chance to interact with, you know, actual people and the way that they act and the way they make choices, the way they make decisions and things like that. And that's really, you know, that's really fun. You're playing a character and you're doing acting basically, you know. And so like questions like that where it's how do I control this player at my table or how do I deal with this player at my table? It's like, well, those aren't game questions. Those are psychology questions. You know, what is rewarding this person over here for this behavior? What is causing, you know, this person to not want to follow along with the, you know, pre-approved storyline? You know, what are all the other contributing factors here? But
you can't, you just, unfortunately, you know, you just can't make people do what you want. You can just talk to them and have conversations, and maybe you guys will meet in the middle somewhere. You know, I think like if you're all have a conversation and you're all unhappy afterwards, that's like how compromise works. Pretty much. I want to let you guys know, if you check out the chat afterwards, like you're going to be able to build out your roster to like 50 with all the Vecna puns that they're throwing out there.
Awesome. I like it.
They got the double chin of Vecna. We've got the sequined glove of Vecna.
Hell yeah! All right. We haven't even gotten to the feet.
Yeah. Scented hand soap of Vecna. Like, there's no end. And for your show, for your drink show, Fraginator, I want a beholder shot, a different liquor for each eye ray.
Oh man, that would be great. I mean, granted, at that point you're gonna have a very big glass, but oh man.
I think that's the one where it's you and Ben, and you gotta spread out like 8 shot glasses so that you.
Oh, do them in a row.
Oh no, you do a circle of 10, and then you have like maybe one bigger one in the middle for the central eye. Yeah.
That is something we'll have to do.
That is going to give someone alcohol poisoning.
Well, you get your other friends there to help you with that one. That's the.
Yeah, so we did that when we did the Storm Giant, and I still drank the majority of it, and still.
You need a real life dwarf on the show for that one.
We have a dude who might just be a real life dwarf around here, so we'll bring him in sometime for that show. It'll be fun.
It'll be good. And then when he dies of alcohol poisoning, we'll be like, we might have misjudged his racial traits.
On, guys, that was the issue.
Yeah, and folks, remember, if you have a question, just put question in front of it. It just makes it easier for me to pick them out of the chat and read them off. So how long have you guys been at it now?
We just went over this the other day. Mike, the blog actually started in around May of 2015. And then I joined about 6 months later in November of 2015. And we've just been going at it since then. We've had the Patreon. We have a Patreon, I think, like we were talking about, and we've had that going just shy of 2 years, 2 days shy of 2 years now. I think we have 600 current subscribers.
I don't even know.
But we've been going. So we've been doing this for about 3 to 4, about 3 years. Give or take a few months here and there. And we brought on our 2 other, so it was, Ben and Mike at first, the Thumb and the Finger at first, in May, and then me, Palm, in November, and then we added 2 more people.
About a year later, Jason and Matthew, the Knuckle and the Nails. About a year later, more guys who we knew who we had been following on the Giant of the Playground forums, and we was like, we want to put out more content, we want to do more stuff. We have this Patreon that's like, dude, that's obviously
being successful, and we want to make bigger books, but we need more people to write because the three of us are just not enough. So we found a couple more people that we really liked, and we were like, hey, you want to come work with us? And they're both like, yes. And you know, one of them, it's cool because Jason, also known as Draco Knight, lives here in the U.S. and he lives down in Austin, Texas. And but then Matthew, the Nails, he's also known as Ninja Prawn on the China Playground forums, and we didn't realize this, he lives out in Scotland. So like we're all over the place in terms of just our creator base, and our it's surprisingly too that our fan base is all over the place. I know that we have at least 2 or 3 people who are fans who are in Australia. Like that's
spread out.
You probably have more than that.
It's a lot. We're just so
they're the ones you know of.
Yeah, I'm going off of the people that commonly interact on our Discord. We have a Discord for our patrons, and like I know a few of the guys off there who are from Australia, from England, from further out than that.
Yeah. We have fans all over the place. It's really crazy. Our newest artist is from Brazil, and he is just the coolest dude. We just released. Hey Jay, remember when back when we had our Patreon books and they were like 30 pages instead of 100?
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I made a 40-page book. It's the biggest thing I'll ever do.
The thing we just finished, it's going live in 2 days. Get first of the month on Patreon is the Faitholio. It is 104 pages, and it is our kind of delve into the Feywild, and it gives us a lot of new race options and tons of monster stats and all that stuff. But our new artist has just been plugging away at that, and we got him to throw in some Brazilian monsters to do art for, just to give it kind of a much broader kind of fantasy perspective on the Fae, and I think we're having a really good time with that.
Cool. That's a lot of work, because we had started out trying to like maybe we can do like an adventure a month, and they were like 20 to 30 pages, and that is a lot of work to do in a month.
Yeah, and that's not even before you get into like actually putting it in the book and making it look pretty and getting art figured out, and it's a lot, and that on top of the stuff that we do twice weekly for the blog. We update Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but God, it's worth it. Our fans have just been serious. Like, we don't deserve them. They're amazing. It's crazy. It's genuinely crazy.
I haven't had that thing where I met somebody in real life who actually knows what we do, on the blog. I know a couple of my personal friends who are like, oh, you write for them. Oh, that's cool. But it is like, I don't understand how people I don't understand how there's all of these people out there who know who I am. Like, just because, I'm not that famous. I'm not I'm not one of those people who's supposed to be known by a ton of people. I'm just me.
Yeah, well, and on a website too, you're not as visible. Like we do YouTube, so they're looking at our ugly faces all the time.
So that helps.
Yeah. But no, it is weird. Like, it's cool and weird at the same time. It's like, you end up in a space you never expected to be. And we like to say we're Z-list celebrities.
Yeah, internet fame is a very, very interesting thing.
Space Goblin has a question for you guys.
I love that name.
Why have you designed the classes you've designed? What is your design process like?
Can I start with this one? Because Jay and I have very different perspectives.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ooh, fight for 4 hours. I want to see this.
He said, fight for 4 hours. Yeah, sure.
No, we'll try to not attack each other. We have very different design philosophies with this. I try to stay very top down, and I always try to get a unique hook, something that is blank the class in such a way that you can kind of get into it and go this works differently, and it provides something different to the edition than anything else does. So our witch class is debuff the class. You get a whole bunch of hexes that are kind of at will, and you get familiar and stuff. But the big thing is everything you get is focused on debuffing and making everyone, your enemies worse. Whereas the bard is kind of more focused on making your allies better. The bard can kind of do a little bit of that, but mixes in. The gunslinger, which uses our firearm rules, is a crit fisher, and he does really explosive crits, and he's got a much wider crit range. So it's basically critical attacks the class. So I try to. We just finished the Gadgeteer, which is also releasing on Patreon. That one is Magic Items, the class, so I try to focus on one specific thing that we can build off of that kind of expands the tier of D&D. So it's not just, oh, this is another rogue, or this is another paladin. So we've got the Craftsman, which is crafting the class, the Alchemist, which is it's an alchemist.
Bomb the class.
Explosions, yeah, all the explosions.
And I think the big one where Mike and I differ in terms of actual initial character or initial design philosophy for classes specifically is mostly that Mike always ends up looking for a mechanical hook right away, where I'm generally looking for a unique thematic hook right away. So the two full classes on the blog that are on the blog of the Patreon that are kind of my babies in terms of what that I did the majority of the creative writing for are the Craftsman and the War Mage. The Craftsman was, I loved Artificers. I really, really loved playing Artificers in 3.5, and I think how long did it was a little while before after we released the Craftsman that Wizards put out their UA with the Artificer in it. They had put out their Wizard. They had put out their UA that had the Wizard subclass Artificer, and everybody was just like, "This isn't what we want. What are you doing? You stop. The Wizard, stop. You're drunk. Go home." And so it's so we're like, well, I want to build something, and I want to build something cool, and I don't want it to be. But it's I don't actually want to just do an Artificer, because Artificers have been done to death, and everybody, you go on any homebrewing blog, there's 40 people who have made Artificer classes, and they all do kind of similar things. So I'm like, well, what if we take a more mundane route with the concept and be like, all right, this guy isn't a magic item enchanter, although we do have a subclass for that in the complete Artificer book we made, that does exactly that thing. He's the maester artisan or something like that.
Yeah.
But let's take a more mundane look with it, and let's just make this guy really good at building things, which is a thing that everybody had been like, oh, well, what's missing out of 5th Ed? Well, crafting rules. There aren't really good crafting rules in 5th Ed. There are better ones now that Xanathars came out and stuff like that, but there aren't really any meaty, chunky crafting rules. And so it's well, let's do something like that. And then so we started building up this idea of, all right, he is really good with mundane stuff, and then he builds custom gear that he upgrades. And then we're like, okay, how can he help out the rest of the party? It's he can also build exotic gear, which is not a thing that.
Yeah. So in addition to just trying to build stuff that is that occupies a niche that isn't in the current edition, and it's still a new edition, and Wizards have been pretty glacial with their release schedule in terms of new content, which I think is a blessing and a curse.
They're getting better at it. They're getting better with.
I think the slow release schedule it has major benefits, and I'm happy with it as well because it gives us more room to play with. But we want to build stuff that expands the options in the core edition, bolted on. So I'm playing a War Mage or something that bolts onto the core edition, and it just provides more options, and it should make the core books more richer for kind of just whatever you're doing, whether you're playing the War Mage or whether you're kind of around. So yeah, we've got a couple of design ideas.
We struggle with this a little bit. I struggle. I should say I should struggle with this because I am a minimalist DM and player, right? And when people are like, "You should make this," I'm like, "Why? You can just do it with what's there," right? Which is a terrible when you have a company and a business that sells products. Let me tell you, because it makes it that much harder for me to go, well, how do I justify making this thing to sell to people? How am I going to offer them value?
Yeah, I totally get. I mean, our kind of entire design philosophy is build an option for literally every player. We don't want to make them too specific. We want to make them completely setting agnostic, but we want to build something that literally everyone can find something that they enjoy. There are just so many archetypes on our blog. It's insane. Yeah. And the classes are really designed about exploring a whole concept that you can then get more specific in.
One of the things that kind of gets to me, and why I like doing the homebrew stuff and why I like making custom stuff is that, I'll give a perfect example. I was playing The Witcher 3 like everybody else was a while back, and I love that game to death. And so I'm like, you know what? I really want to play a Witcher in 5e. And so I built a whole class based around it with all the alchemy stuff, with all the bombs and all the magic signs and everything like that. But we never released it. It's just a thing that I did personally. You know, everybody's like, well, you could just do it with mixing ranger, and then you do a little bit of half this, and you multi-class over here, and things like that. And you can totally build it. It's totally fine. I'm like, yeah. But the problem is that doesn't feel cohesive for a player, right? You want to start from level 1 and going all the way through to level 20 with a cohesive idea of what your character is. You don't really want a piecemeal. At least I think people like being able to say, I'm an alchemist from level 1, and I have bombs, and I'm getting better at being an alchemist. I'm not a wizard who also happens to throw jugs of chemicals at people, you know. You know, I'm a fighter who just happened to take some crafting skills, and I kind of can do some better stuff. But I can kind of make a nicer sword. But I don't know if I know how to build a complex like repeating crossbow or something like that. Like I think I personally, when I build stuff, I really like to have that cohesion all the way across from level 1 to level 20, and I don't like having to wait until level 5 or 6 to say, all right, now I'm finally playing the character that I wanted to play. It'd rather be I'm playing the character I want to play, and then I've finally gotten the level of power that I'm happy with.
And I totally get that. I'm just like, I had a player want to play an alchemist like early on. I was like, I'll just play a wizard and reflavor the spells. I'm like, done. So like all their spell components were just like them mixing stuff and throwing stuff, and
that's perfectly acceptable. I think, like I've said, I'm one of my things. I love the fact that 5e is so easy to reflavor, and it doesn't really impact much. I've played plenty of. I think in addition to that first wizard warlock that I made, who had the my first 5th edition character who had the laser pistol as his Eldritch Blast instead of anything else. I remember going through the Warlock when I first saw it, and I'd also just seen the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm like, I could 100% build Star-Lord using these rules without any problems. I just have to reflavor everything as he's throwing like gadgets at people, or he has instead of casting levitate, he has rocket boots, or any of that kind of stuff. So that's always a perfectly viable explanation. I just think I think that people, especially if it's one of those things where maybe you're a player who, because most everybody who plays D&D is pretty creative, but if you're a player who has trouble getting your head around certain like reflavoring concepts and things like that, or if you have a DM who doesn't really like reflavoring, it's one of those things where, well, I'm an alchemist. And I kind of want to have the mechanics back up how it feels to be an alchemist, kind of. I want to have the mechanics back up me mixing chemicals together and throwing it at the beholder.
Yeah, I mean, reflavoring cantrips is fine unless you really want splash. Like, if I throw a bomb at something, it should splash damage a little bit. And there's these little things that you can do that make something mechanically feel like the theme. And I think that's one of the magic things about D&D, about games. You can make mechanics, these little things that work on paper that make you feel like you're doing the thing, which I think is a big part of what we do and why it works.
Also, I think as proven by especially for like previous editions of D&D and with all the UA releases over the last year or so, players want more content. Like even if they never use it in a single game, people who play, like I have it. They're not here; they're out in the living room. But I have that same shelf of books that everybody has. I'm a collector of the Exalted stuff, like the old Exalted system from White Wolf, and I have so many of those books. I have never played that game. I have never played that. I've never sat around. I love those books. I love reading through all the character options for that stuff. I love stuff. I have never played that game once, and it's just, I think like, I know myself, I like having those kind of things to just look at and be like, huh, well, maybe I could make this character, or maybe I can make this character, or it'd be cool if I could do this. And I think other people like doing that too. And I think even if you never use the rules, you like having the extra stuff there to just like look at and peruse and really, read through.
I totally agree. I mean, like, I always talk about having Story of King's Thunder, and the only thing I think I've ever used out of it was the pixie dust. We do that stuff all the time as collectors, and I agree. Like, there needs, like, people like content. I like content, and I'm just like, just how I think, right? It has nothing to do with how other people play the game or how they think or what they're doing. Is like, I believe everyone should play the game they want to, but now, like I'm saying, for me, the struggle is moving into the space as a designer, and with that kind of mentality, it makes it more. It's more challenging for me because I know other people want that stuff, so it's like figuring out how to do it and put myself in their shoes and give them what they want. It's going to be useful in their games. It makes it really hard. Like, we just released a product this week from Hit Dice to Heroics, and it's just taking the hit die mechanic and using it to power abilities instead of getting hit points back.
That's really cool. I like that idea a lot. Hey, Mike, we should steal that one.
Yeah, I have to confess that someone else also did it. TPK Games also did one as well, and I've been thinking since the very beginning that 5e has these mechanics that could do other things. And they're not being utilized for stuff.
This is like, again, like I said, like 5e's release schedule is pretty slow, and it gives us a lot of room to like expand on it. I think this is all like very, very good for the edition, and it gives us a lot of like place to build from. When you kind of look at it, it's like it's a very modular edition. You can bolt stuff onto it and fundamentally change the way things are. I think it's one of the reasons people like the Warlock so much. They intuitively get a sense of like, oh, this thing is just a bunch of features scrapped together. Boons over here, invocations over here.
I love the way it plays.
You can expand it in so many different ways, so it's kind of like a designer's best friend, because you can just be like, take this part out, new boons. This part out, and it's so you can do like a lot with like this core set. Like, I played a lot of 3.5, but I didn't homebrew as much as 3.5. We didn't build new stuff in 3.5 as much as we do now. It's so modular.
Depending too, when you came into 3.5, it had been done 3 times already. Whatever that thing was you're going to make.
Yeah, 100% true. There's so much in 3.5 already, and I think that's like really part of the charm of it. And Pathfinder, there's so much in those editions that you can pick anything. It's there, and I think that's what we want to bring back to some extent. Like, we want it to be more controlled.
Yeah, and at least at the very least with 5e though too, it's not, because I mean, I played so much Pathfinder in 3.5, but like by the end of 3.5 and getting to this point where they're getting to second edition Pathfinder, like, man, there is, if you want to build a character, it is so much. You have to have like encyclopedic knowledge to make sure that you're doing the right thing. It's one of the things I love about 5e is that I did not have to know every single tiny rule to make a character that works from 1 to 20. Maybe that level 20 fighter is not as powerful as a level 20 wizard. We're not talking 4th edition here, where everything is on the same damage curve and the same, the kind of same balance level for everything. But that fighter isn't useless at higher levels like he might have been in previous editions. He's still very powerful. He's still very unique. He still brings a thing to the table. And so even us adding a ton of content to 5th edition, like, yeah, those options are really good, but at the same time, the way that we build stuff, like, even if you have a table with a craftsman, an alchemist, a witch, a war mage, a channeler, we built that. We did a expansion of the an update of the Shugenja, like a bunch of different things that we've just put out. It's like, even if you use all of our stuff, if you have a player at the table who's playing a champion fighter and using nothing but the player's handbook, he will still stand up toe-to-toe with most of those guys, like, without too much of a problem, because that's one of the things, that's the way 5e kind of works, and I love that part. In Pathfinder, no, like, you build a base level fighter, you're going to get trounced by literally everything, and one person who has a source book somewhere who knows that these 3 specific feats that make you do 1 billion points of damage in a single round, provided that you set everything up in 2 turns, like, that system is there for people who have just innate mastery of it.
And I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard several people say if you come, you play Pathfinder and you come to the table and you build your character wrong, people get angry. Like going to a blackjack table and and asking for the wrong cards at the wrong time.
Right. It's like you're screwing over everybody else's chances at the table. And I don't know that that's like. I don't like to interact with players like that. Like it was part of I was playing my games at a shop a while back. A game store that unfortunately closed down not too long ago, and that was part of the thing I didn't like about going there was because I was hopping into random games and I was hopping in with people that I didn't really know, and it's like I don't want to I'm here to have fun and I want to hang out with my friends. I don't want to deal with somebody who's going to be mad at me for making a wizard who is less than optimal, or making a monk who decides to be all peaceable about everything. And it's like, I want to play the character I want to play, and
mind your own character. That's something I've said many times. Mind your own character. That's it. The Mighty Hobbs has something for your drinks. Have you ever seen the drink called the Warp Core Breach from Cork's Bar, which used to be in the Las Vegas Star Trek experience? Might be an idea for the main eye of the Beholder drink.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I have
sounds awesome.
Unfortunately, I don't think any of us are real hardcore Trekkies at all. Like, at least I don't think so. I mean, Mike, you talk about how much you like Stargate, but that's a different thing. So
yeah.
Well, Star is in there.
Yeah, I mean,
they're all basically the same, right?
Yeah, no, it's exactly the same. It's no big deal. And cue Flame War.
Yeah. So, TrueMate wants to know, on that note, are there any new upcoming projects in the works?
Well, we always have plenty. We always have a docket of stuff that we're working on. I mean, as Mike said, we're just finishing up the Fey Folio, which is our expansion into the Fey Wild, which is a little bit more. It's a passion project. A lot of that is a passion project for our guy Matthew, the Nails of Vecna, who's out in Scotland, who is just he's fantastic. He's a great guy, and he really wanted to get something based around fairies and also a lot of the real world lore of like fae and fairies and stuff like that, and do something really different from what we had seen. We're always working on stuff.
This month we have so much coming out this month. So we're releasing that. We're releasing a new base class called the Gadgeteer, which is really kind of built around our dark matter setting. You can use it elsewhere, but it really is kind of supposed to be like the core class lifeblood of that. And we're also releasing a third thing that I'm not going to tell anyone about. That's going to be a surprise on Patreon. And then next month we're delving into kind of expanding some chapters of dark matter because we really want to make those chapters a little more robust. So if we ever want to do anything with this setting, I mean, it's only 125 pages right now. Ideally for this kind of setting, we feel like it needs to be 200. So we're expanding those and really just buffing them out and throwing new art at them. So we're kind of Siege Bowl as well.
Oh yeah. Oh geez, we haven't even talked about that.
Dave, do you know Siege Bowl?
Siege Bowl? What is Siege Bowl?
So Siege Bowl is if you're familiar with like Warhammer 40k, they've got their own sport, which is Blood Bowl. Not 40k, I guess. Sorry, Warhammer Fantasy. D&D 3.5 had its own sport, kind of made up on the TG forum, I think. But it's kind of spread around a little bit, where it's this sport that you play that just is in D&D. It uses a lot of the core rules. You've got a ball and two towers, and you're hitting the ball to knock over the other person's tower.
Kind of like a weird, violent version of cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that idea so much. We've been converting it gradually over to 5th edition, and at some point, so we've got the core rules kind of nailed down. It plays really well. It's a lot more streamlined than things would have been in 3.5. So yeah, that's up on our blog, and we're just kind of gradually plugging away at it, and we're going to release a big book with that at some point. God, we love that sport.
I've done a couple sports. I've done Rat Ball, which is a goblin game. They sew a couple of rats together, and it's kind of like a mash. It's kind of like rugby. It's a mash between rugby and lacrosse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, so I had players like get involved, like so there was like goblin tribe or kobold tribes, and instead of going to war, they would just have matches to see who was in charge each season, and then they would sacrifice some of the losers.
The thing about it is you can do a one-off like that and just be like, oh, this is the thing that happens here, or you can just go like, okay, this is now a sports campaign. You're starting off as a small town thing in an underground league, and you're going to work your way up to the big time, and you're going to play in the championship cup. There's so much to that. I just love everything about it. So that's one of the things we're working on. I mean, we're always working on like 5 different projects.
Hey, Mike, you wanna go ahead and talk about the big elephant in the big elephant in the room, the one that we're doing in a couple of months here.
Oh wait, which one are you talking about?
The one that starts with a K. Really? Okay. All right, I'll go ahead.
I wasn't going to mention that yet. Dark matter for big things.
Yeah, it's okay. I think we
not to announce anything.
We have a live audience though. I think it's
I know, guys fight over whether you should launch it or not.
No, you don't want to. All right.
Nope, wasn't going to mention it. Not mention it.
That's fine.
Not going to do it. You guys are just going to have to keep your ears to the ground.
Keep your ears to the ground. We got something big coming.
Yeah. I was hypothetically doing something very, very big with dark matter in the future that involves physical print copies. I would not be announcing it this early because I would want the entire book finished. Well, ahead of time, so I can commit.
Allegedly.
So that's
hypothetically.
I'm definitely not announcing here. Nor should anyone expect anything from me. So I better not hear any comments about it.
That's great. So we did almost have a sports campaign. We were running an open legend game, and I let the patrons vote on what kind of game it was going to be. And it was like really close between like fantasy, steampunk, espionage, and eldritch horror. So I was like, whatever, I'll just run them all in one game. So so we did like these xenophobic sky cities, but they would each have their own Etherball league, and that was like the only way they would kind of interact with each other. And so like it would also be like sporting events, but politicking would happen at these events as well, and it would be played in this like half dome, this sunken like pit where they would like fly around in there and like throw these balls, and they had like it was almost like Quidditch without the brooms.
That's really great. I like it. Yeah, I think Siege Ball is the way that's kind of developed is more along the lines of, like I said, it's kind of somewhere between rugby and cricket, except for you can hit other people with a bat. So it works pretty well as far as we've gone so far. We put a lot of the people on our Patreon, like I don't know that everybody is super into it, but the people who are into it are really into it. Like we do voting and surveys every month or so to see like, oh, what should we work on next? And pretty much every month until we released like our last big Siege Ball thing was just like, when are you guys gonna do more Siege Ball stuff? When are you guys gonna do another Siege Ball stuff? Siege Ball stuff, that's what it is this time. And I think one of our last ones that we did was just like, all right, here's your 4 options: Siege Ball, Siege Ball, Siege Ball, Siege Ball, just so we could get that out of the way.
So Verital says I follow Siege Ball more than real sports.
Well, good, Verital. We'll make sure to keep you interested in that stuff.
And Space Goblin is now I want to do X Crawl with 5e, which is funny because we were kind of doing a video.
Oh, no, that's cool. I like that idea.
We were doing a video. My partner Ted begins describing something. I'm just laughing all the time. He's like, "What?" I'm like you just described X Crawl. It happened in 3.5.
Yeah, no, I really like X Crawl, and that's I haven't played a lot of X Crawl, but I played stuff that's in the same vein as X Crawl, which is just great. It's a really neat idea in terms of just like, let's turn D&D, like the actual conceit of D&D, and going through a dungeon and fighting monsters and turning it into a freaking like wrestling event, basically.
It's like Running Man.
Yeah, no, it totally is.
Reality TV.
Oh, it's so good.
You know what? You know what that would be awesome as? That would be an amazing live stream game.
Oh yeah.
On Twitch,
that
where
would be great.
where you have people and they're able to buy into the game and make things happen. Like here's a trapdoor or whatever.
You could run if you're doing this on Twitch or something. Run polls as to when the trap goes off. Oh man, there's so much you can do with that.
They already have games where like you for bits, X amount of bits, and this thing happens, like money transactions.
I've never even thought of doing that before. That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So do you guys play together at all as a group, or?
Yeah, we're running through Tomb of Annihilation right now, kind of in our free time. It gives us a chance to play test some of our classes a little more, some of the ones that we just want to like really nail the balance on. Tomb of Annihilation has been just a blast so far. I'm digging the hell out of that adventure.
And then like me, I currently run a Monday game with some of our patrons, and at least one of our other fellow writers is going to get in on that one. Because I get into this stuff not just because I like to write, but because I really like to play D&D. It's my favorite game. So
Do you guys dabble with any other RPGs?
Currently, no, because I don't have I have a job and I don't have enough free time.
Yeah, so we talked about how much time it takes to do this. I wish I had more time to fraternize with other D&Ds, other RPGs. I can play board games sometimes. I get to play Sentinels and Multiverse. I just bought the Dark Souls board game.
Yeah, Sentinels and Multiverse. It's my personal contribution to the group because I don't think they even heard of it until I brought it up.
No, and you indoctrinated us into that card game.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
But yeah, anyway, so I wish I had more time for other stuff, but I try to read other RPGs, like just picking up the core books and thumbing through them. But I rarely have time to play a proper game.
I've done plenty of gaming outside of D&D. As a matter of fact, for a significant period of time, in between 3.5 and really getting into Pathfinder, I did a lot of gaming was superhero themed, so like 4-color fantasy and mutants and masterminds and stuff like that. And I love playing superhero games. Like they're just really fun. They really give you the opportunity to kind of expand on that stuff. And just build the character out. And I played some other stuff. I played Rifts, GURPS. I've played Savage Worlds. And I like a lot of that stuff. I think 5e keeps pulling back in. I did not play 4th, except for a couple of times, and not because I think it's a bad system. I just didn't really like it very much. It didn't really do it for me. So I was playing Pathfinder while 4th was out. But since I kind of got to 5th edition, I've been making it do whatever I kind of want it to do, as opposed to playing other settings. And I mean, and on the other side, I also played Vampire for quite a while.
Yeah, so instead of playing the new edition of Call of Cthulhu, we made a Lovecraft handbook. Actually, we have podcast friends who are doing that as a podcast. They're running a Call of Cthulhu kind of style 1920s noir mystery using our Lovecraft handbook, and it is so fun. That's Hero Club podcast. They're just starting out, but they're amazing. Look them up if you can. They're really, really great.
Oh, cool. We did a Mutants and Masterminds run for a while between 3.5 and 5e. We played 4th probably for a year or 18 months, and then we just kind of moved into Mutants and Masterminds, and then started playing all of our games there. Fantasy. We did urban fantasy. We basically did a Dresden Files game there, and then super games as well. Wow, that's crazy.
It's a really funny thing. You talk about Dresden Files. So my wife, and part of the reason why. Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
And so my wife, her gaming group had been playing Vampire the same campaign for 2 years, and then they switched over. Dresden Files. They tried playing the Dresden Files game, which I don't know if you've looked at the Dresden Files game, but that thing is kind of seemingly based off of Fate, and I don't like Fate. And apparently neither did they. So they tried playing Dresden Files and like this has a lot of lore but not very many rules, and I don't really know how to control any of this. So they basically just cobbled together a Dresden Files game based off of Vampire the Masquerade and Mage the Ascension and like all the stuff, that all the old like second edition White Wolf stuff. And they just basically cobbled that all together because the official book was like, I don't really like that much. So yeah, I know what it's all about, trying to like, you know, make a system fit what you want it to do.
We found like Mutants and Masterminds was really good for that. And I don't know why my phone just went crazy and just started playing music for no reason. It's like sitting up to this.
I assumed that was a ringtone.
No, it's not a ringtone. It just literally, like, I saw it do some things and then just started playing music somehow.
So it's haunted is what we're getting at.
Yeah. I'm like, what the?
We have, in our house, in the house that I live in here, we always say we have this, we always say we have a ghost in the house, but it's a really kind of like bad ghost that doesn't have any powers. All it can do is open and or close the hall closet.
Yeah.
Has no other abilities other than that. Just has the ability to every once so often open the hall closet.
You know, that might be okay if it like at least opened it when you needed stuff.
Well, the problem is every so often we'll find like that cat just like, or one of the cats like closed up in there because we had shut the door. We come over, it's like, oh, it's open, and then we'll shut the door, and then we'll just hear meow coming from inside the closet, and it's like, why are you in there? And it's like, oh, okay, the ghost opened the door again.
Yeah. Its only power is to trap the cat.
Yeah, basically. No, I don't know if it's just lonely or something like that. But.
Yeah. For us, we play like two games in person, once a month. Ted runs one, I run one, and then we would try to get like a third person to just run a different system for us. Like right now, we've done Cypher System that way. We've done Star Wars that way. We're actually doing Star Wars now. We've done
the new Star Wars.
Yeah, we've done some Fate Accelerated that way as well. Which to be honest with you, you were talking about the Dresden Files game. I have the book and I've read like halfway through it. It's actually one of the best written RPG books I've read. Like, let's face it, most RPG books are like reading stereo instructions.
Yeah.
They're not very exciting. That one's actually fun to read. I haven't played it. I've played a little bit of Fate. It is very rules light, so if you want rules heavier, yeah, I could see how you're not going to like that at all. But we definitely, I personally, the older I get, like the less I want rules. Like 5e is about as crunchy as I want right now.
Yeah.
And
yeah, for sure.
I really like, you know, that was one of the things that kind of that kind of pulled me back into like with just 5e specifically, is that like it is, because it's not 100% rules light. It is still crunchy enough for people who really want that, the people who really like having it to have character options and the ability to like build an optimized character and everything. They have that there, but also it's super easy to run, where it's like, all right, pick a skill, pick a relevant stat, roll a die, and you can do basically everything you need to in that game. And I love the fact that it's very easy to just, you know, run on the fly and just make, you know, how do I do this weird thing? Well, I don't have to dig through 40 books to figure out if they've written a rule for that. I can just say, pick a skill, pick a relevant stat modifier, and make a d20 roll, and I can make that happen.
I forget who was saying, one of the more recent guests are like, I hate DM Fiat. And like that was one of the things we kind of like about 5e, is that there's a lot more. I guess the problem with a Pathfinder system or a 3.5 system is like there literally was a rule for everything. So you literally had to worry about every time you made a ruling, a player going to the page of the rule and of fighting and arguing with you instead of let's just play the game.
Yeah. Well, I had some, you know, I get on a couple of my favorite boards on Reddit, which is DM horror stories and just looking at D&D and stuff. Or no, it's our D&D horror stories. And most of that, I mean, a lot of that is bad players. A lot of that is, you know, people who would rather be playing Fatal because they're awful people. but also a lot of it is just rules lawyers and people who really get into the weeds about, like, well, the game doesn't say you can do this, or the game says you can do that, and the game doesn't say you can do this, and it's like, well, but the core conceit is that as a DM, since you're the arbiter of the game, like, you want to have a set rule structure that any player that comes in can expect to work. Like, any player that comes into a D&D 5e game should expect that when they cast Fireball at 3rd level, it does 8d6 damage. Right? That is a core conceit. It's in the book. That's how it works. And if you change that, well, you need to make sure people know that ahead of time, because then they manage their expectations. But D&D has so few rules with the weird esoteric, like, oh, here's how do I do this confusing thing? What do I roll for parkour? It's like, well, it's somewhere between athletics and acrobatics, blah blah blah. They don't have a rule set up for that, so it's like, all right, well, the DM says on the fly, all right, it's going to be this check, and then for the rest of the game, it's just this check, and you can set that rule up without having to worry about it or have it be contradicted for you later on.
It's an expandable system.
And
everything we do with it is like, just bolt on a new thing. It'll work. And as long as you kind of keep to the core kind of conceits, the only thing I fear is that with the fullness of time, those people who love the way too much crunch in 5th edition, or in 3.5 and Pathfinder and earlier editions, they're going to bring all that back if they like ever start abandoning that like core conceit of simplicity that underlies all of 5th edition.
Well, I guess you kind of start, and you see that with the third-party stuff. It's like,
yes.
Every once in a while, I'll just see a product, and it was literally like, how do I make 5th edition 3rd edition? And like,
well, it's like we did the Craftsman, and then when we re-released the Craftsman in a more complete package, one of our guys, Nijpron, he had a set of crafting rules that he had written up that were much more expansive, much more like, oh, okay, I can go find special materials, I can set up a business so I can sell the stuff. I can
running a business, and I asked so much of that. There's you want this focus and you want this simplicity when it comes to everything in 5th edition, and I'm terrified of ever even just approaching some of that complexity that kind of entered from previous editions.
But with that too, it's like
is very, very as simple and as effective as we can make it.
Yeah, but with the other side part of that though too is that like we try not to add a lot of stuff that seems like it would be integral to playing the game. I.e., like with the crafting rules, those crafting rules are totally optional. Like even if you play a craftsman, the extra crafting rules are totally optional. They are not something that is binding you or preventing you from doing something. They're just a supplemental rule if you want to get into that a little bit more and have it be more impactful in a mechanical sense. It's not, we release a bunch, and that's kind of why we focus a lot more on character options, because it's like, okay, well, I'm playing this and it has these like 5 rules that are new things that I can do. The DM says, okay, yeah, you can do those things. That's totally fine, but it doesn't impact the other core rules of the game. You know what I mean? And everything we have is not designed to be like, okay, this is how you do a backflip. Okay, this is how you tame a shark. Okay, this is how you do this weird thing that you're only going to do once. It's bolt-on, like easily adaptable stuff that's not going to negatively impact the game. It's always additive.
Yeah, and that's how we feel as well. It's like everything is optional, add things, and like I think like one of our products of end of last year was fantastical mounts, right? We just came up with, I think it was like 5 new mount options, and like simple rules for training them and caring for your mount in there, things like that. That are just like things that like it doesn't matter if you add them, but if you do, it just adds more flavor to the game.
Has it occurred to you that is basically the horse armor DLC?
The what?
that particular book is basically horse armor DLC.
Horse armor?
Oh, sorry. I guess this is more of like the stereotype of like bad DLC that nobody asked for is horse armor from Oblivion. Where they had a DLC that just gives you armor for your horse.
It wasn't. It's not bad DLC. It was the old thing. it was before DLC got like really a big thing, and cosmetics became the thing for like a lot of that stuff. Where it's like, I paid $3 to get armor for my horse, so that doesn't impact my game at all. And nowadays, it's like the only thing you should be paying real money for is cosmetics, that don't actually affect your gameplay.
Yes, it is absolutely that then.
No, it's totally great. I love that.
I just saw the funny parallel there.
And that's kind of to be fair, that's kind of a lot of the things that we do plenty of mechanical stuff, but there's also plenty of that the other the
strictly aesthetic
stuff, or just blatantly stupid stuff that we do, cheese wizard and stuff like that.
Although, like, one of the side effects that we didn't think about when we were kind of doing it was like, oh, wait a minute, this is also now options for your druid to wild shape into, because, most of them were just beasts. So.
Yeah, the echo effect or the ripple effect for how your choices impact other players and other characters is insane, especially when you start having a lot of content. So like if somebody says, oh well, yeah, somebody in my game, I will tell you this, like as the creator, or as one of the creators for Finger of Vecna and Mage Press, and as someone who loves our stuff, someone who loves our content, loves playing with it and running it, any DM who wants to run it, make sure that you look at it and you check it beforehand, and you make sure that it's okay for your game, because while it may be fine while playing, playing a marshal, we built a marshal class. While playing that might be fine for one person's game, or might be fine for my game, it might not be cool for somebody else. Maybe they don't want to deal with the issues that thing brings up. Or like with the War Mage, we have a bunch of extra cantrips that we added into that. And it's like if you add the War Mage, you necessarily have to add those extra cantrips in. So if you're not comfortable with those, or those spells being accessible by the other spellcasters in the party, who they may not have been designed for, you need to make sure you're okay with that.
I mean, this comes back to the way we write everything. We write options for the players, but really it's for the DM. Like, we haven't published adventure modules. Like, we don't do that because we think at most levels, players, or like DMs, want to make their own world. They want to make their own cool adventures. So we make kind of everything we can to just give them tools to do that. So as much as we build like player options, we kind of really want to make this kind of just an experience that anyone can like customize and build up on their own. That's I guess kind of our core mod. Like at some level, that's one of our like guiding principles. Like this is really for the DM to make a greater game and a greater experience. We don't want to like tell people where the tavern is, what it's named, and who's inside. We just want to make the rules better to get there.
And we also don't want to like set the bar prices or anything like that. We want to give the players the ability to fill that particular tavern with a bunch of weird dudes. I'm trying to watch my language here. The DM to come to the table, and well, like for example, my Monday game, the one that I run Monday nights with the patrons. Most of them are playing stuff from our website. Pretty much everybody, oddly enough, except for Jason, who is joining the game soon, who is not playing anything that we've written. He's playing stuff 100% by the book. I think the cast of that one is a tiefling alchemist who is from dark matter, who's from space. It's a shard mind craftsman, a pixie, who we released a pixie race in the most recent thing, who is also who's also a vampire, who also is a shugenja, right? It's very weird. We have a witch. We have the bird person, our kind of weird Egyptian bird race, the Abiyara, who is playing an Arcana cleric, and just this insane mishmash of people. Like nobody's playing the Bill the Human Fighter. It's all these just crazy things, and that's the thing that I love. I love like the idea of like, oh, we're gonna go to the tavern. You're just gonna see like characters nobody's ever come up with before. I'm gonna see the guy who decided to make a sentient raptor and turned it into a bard or something like that.
Yeah, when you lift the constraints of like elf, dwarf, orc, human,
well, no,
like the 4 basic classes, people come up with crazy, awesome stuff, and we want to like empower that, right?
Let's just be fair, Mike. No one should ever play elves. Elves are the worst.
I am against elves on moral level, and he's trying to get me started. I have a problem with them in the way they're typically used in world design. I think they get boring. They get the boring shaft.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to actually have to wrap up, guys, because I'm probably 15, 20 minutes past the wrapping up spot. But I've enjoyed talking with you guys and winding you up and letting you guys go. And, the chat has been going the whole time in all kinds of crazy directions. But I do appreciate you guys coming on. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
This is a really good time. I enjoyed it.
Especially when you guys want to announce that thing that you're not announcing yet.
Yeah, we'll hit you up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone for the chat, for hanging out with us today. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Thanks, guys.